Okay, so we're about to dive into one of history's most radical thinkers, a man who lived his philosophy so completely that his life was the argument. You know, this famous job from Plato, it really captures the whole puzzle of Diogenes of Sinope. It gets right to the heart of it. He was like Socrates in that he questioned everything about society, but his methods, man, they were so extreme, so confrontational, that even other philosophers thought he was completely unhinged.
So, which was it? Was he just a provocateur, a performance artist looking for attention, or was there a really deep philosophy behind all that bizarre behavior? Well, to figure that out, we've got to look past all the crazy stunts and get to the powerful ideas that were driving him.
To get a handle on this so-called madness, you first have to understand the man. Diogenes was born around 412 BC in Sinope, a Greek colony on the Black Sea. And contrary to what you might think, he was not born into poverty, not even close.
He actually came from a wealthy and powerful family. His dad was a money changer, basically in charge of the city's mint, and Diogenes himself was a magistrate. So his early life was one of real privilege. But then a huge scandal hit, and it changed his path forever. His life just completely flipped on its head when he and his father were accused of a pretty serious crime. It led to him being exiled, kicked out of his home city. But this event, it wasn't going to be his downfall. In fact, it would become the very foundation of his entire philosophical project.
Okay, this phrase right here, paras sheraton to nomisma, it is the key to his entire philosophy. It's got this brilliant double meaning. See, on one level, it's about the literal crime, tampering with coins. But the word nomisma doesn't just mean coins. It also means customs, conventions, laws.
So you see what he did? The very thing that got him banished became his life's mission.
His exile triggered what some sources call a profound spiritual conversion. He took a literal crime and turned it into this powerful metaphor. For the rest of his life, he was going to revalue the currency of society, showing everyone that their values were basically counterfeit. So he ends up in Athens and later lives in Corinth, and he doesn't just, teach his philosophy, he performs it in public every single day. And his shocking lifestyle earned him the nickname the Cynic, which comes from the Greek word kainokos, meaning dog-like. And you know what? He totally embraced it. His main goal was this idea called autarky, which is really just a fancy way of saying radical self-sufficiency. This meant freeing himself not just from stuff, from possessions, but from the desire for them. It was all about needing nothing from the world that you couldn't provide for yourself. And he demonstrated this in some truly unforgettable ways. His commitment to this was just absolute. I mean, he lived in a giant ceramic jar, a pithos, by the way, not a wooden barrel like you see in a lot of paintings. He famously threw away his only cup after he saw a little kid drinking water from his hands. He just realized, wow, even a cup is an unnecessary luxury. Now, this extreme commitment to needing nothing was famously put to the test by the most powerful man in the known world. The story goes that Alexander the Great, hearing about this strange philosopher, went to find him. Imagine the scene. Alexander shows up with his whole entourage, ready to grant this guy any wish he could possibly have. And this comeback is just legendary. It's echoed through history for a reason. He asked for nothing that Alexander, the great conqueror, could give him. He only asked for something the king was taking away, the sunlight. I mean, this response just perfectly shows his total indifference to power, wealth, and fame. The only thing he needed was what nature already provided, and hey, the king was in the way. Diogenes practiced what the Greeks called parrhesia, which means fearless, frank, often brutal honesty. He was constantly challenging conventions, and he especially loved going after other philosophers. So when Plato, the great Plato, defined a human as a feathered biped, Diogenes gave this unforgettable and probably very messy rebuttal. Now, this is maybe his most famous stunt, but the common translation gets it a little bit wrong. He wasn't looking for an honest man. The Greek sources say he was looking for an anthropos, a true human being, someone fully realized, wise, living in tune with nature. His whole point was that in a city packed with people, he couldn't find a single one. So, what are we supposed to take away from this eccentric figure? It's really easy to just dismiss him as a crank, a total weirdo, right? But his influence on Western thought is actually surprisingly huge and really profound. For starters, he was the very first person to declare himself a citizen of the world, a cosmopolites. He was rejecting all these narrow tribal identities for a universal one. And his idea of radical self-sufficiency, that autarky we talked about, directly influenced Stoicism. The Stoics basically took his idea that external things like wealth and status don't matter for a good life and refined it into their core belief that virtue is the only real good. And of course, for thousands of years, he has remained this powerful symbol of defiance. But here's a modern twist, a real irony. The name of the man who chose to own nothing is now attached to a behavioral disorder defined by compulsive hoarding. Yeah, Diogenes syndrome gets the philosopher completely 100% wrong. And this distinction is so important. Diogenes' life was a choice. It was a deliberate, public performance of his philosophy. He was actively engaging with society, trying to provoke it. In complete contrast, the syndrome named after him is all about private withdrawal, hoarding, and neglect. The two just could not be more different. So, in the end, Diogenes' big project of revaluing the currency is a challenge that's just as powerful today as it ever was. He forces us to hold up a lamp to our own lives, to our own society, and ask, what conventions are we following blindly? What desires are we chasing that bring us no real joy? In a world of just endless distraction and consumption, his radical simplicity leaves us with a powerful and, maybe a pretty uncomfortable question.